Hi, I am Reymalyn Presentacion from BASS PartII, and I'm here to report about another aspect of ecological change and problems, which is the population growth and the urbanization of the third world. I will first tackle about the population growth. We are accustomed to linear thinking about growth. However, global population growth has been exponential. This suggests that the human population expanded extremely slowly for centuries, but presently expanding quite quickly. Prior to the year 1 CE, there were only 250 million individuals on the Earth. By the 1600s, the population had roughly doubled to 500 million individuals. The population doubled again at year 1850, then again around 1930. And by 1970, the global population had surpassed 4 billion people. The picture shows the graph of population throughout the history. These statistics are startling, but the repercussions are much more so, such as expansion raises the pressure on all types of food and economic resources. A growing population eats more, consumes more, and pollutes more. As population increases, the population also decreases. This could mean that there are newborns and there is also death, and that is the reason for the declining of population. The picture shows the demographic transition model, which is based on historical population patterns of two demographic parameters, which is the birth rate and the death rate. To propose that a nation's total population growth rate cycles through stages as its economy improves. In tandem with the industrialization, possibilities for the women to work outside the home and the formation of national social security schemes independent of kinship emerged. Therefore, industrialization generated numerous incentives for smaller families. As economic incentives shifted, cultural norms encouraging big families weakened. What caused this demographic transition to occur in the industrial world? First, industrialization upgraded both manufacturing and agricultural productivity so that the economic base could support a much larger population. Second, medical advances in the control of epidemic disease and improvements in public services, such as urban sewage and water systems, garbage collections, and so forth, contributed to improve health and reduce mortality rates. Third, as populations became increasingly urbanized, family changes occurred. Children, their education and rearing, became more of an economic burden than an asset. So now, let's proceed to the uneven distribution. Since World War II, there has been a quick introduction of adequate improvements in healthcare to drastically cut the death rate in the third world, resulting in far faster population growth than in the nations of the first world. The average lifespan of industrialized and developing nations have converged, and infants born in poor nations now have a chance of reaching maturity that is unmatched in the history. According to the demographic transition model, many nations of the third world appear to be stuck in the stage 2, with large declines in mortality but considerably slower or non-existent declines in fertility. Urbanization in the Third World. The 23rd of May 2007 was a momentous occasion for the world's population. On that day, the urban population surpassed rural population worldwide. There are vast numbers of displaced farmers in the Third World due to the consolidation of small subsistence farms into massive cash crop plantations. However, there are also demographic refugees displaced from the land by the less obvious but nonetheless significant population pressure of high birth rates in rural areas. Some have migrated to the countries with better economic conditions. There is a tiny but growing flow of international migration from developing countries to industrialized nations. The pattern of internal migration from the countryside to the metropolis of the Third World is, however, more significant. In summary, the majority of experts in 1980s anticipated that developing countries would complete the demographic transition before irrecoverably harming the Earth's carrying capacity of human existence, and that the far slower growth rates among wealthy countries were not a concern. In addition, overwhelming evidence continued to mount regarding the negative environmental impact of human societies and economies, such as drastically altering the Earth's climate, destroying the water tables and fertile soils that provide the ability to feed the growing billions, producing toxins that poison not only humans but also other species and destroying the habitats of those other species with which we share the planet. Moreover, it became increasingly apparent that the problem was not merely the rapid population increase of developing nations, but also the record levels of spending among the world's affluent classes, particularly in the industrialized nations. In addition, it was determined that the average citizen of a developed nation had a much greater impact on the environment than the average resident of a developing nation. By the 1996, the developed nations with roughly 20% of the world's population used 60 to 80% of the planet's natural resources, including 80% of its paper, iron, and steel, 75% of its timber and energy, 60% of its meat, fertilizer and cement, and 50% of its fish and grain. Though there is a huge inequalities, developing countries' share of global resources is slowly increasing as the population increases and will continue to do so if economic growth is moderate.